Cool. Welcome, everyone. This is another episode of Filmmakers After Dark. I have local armourer with me, Brendan Moriarty. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. Yourself?
That's good. Not too bad, not too bad. So for the people out there that don't know who you are or what you do, besides obviously your normal day job, do you want to give them a bit of a rundown on what you do in the film industry?
Obviously I do this part-time, so my primary role is I supply imitation firearms and prop firearms to the local movie industry, and along with supplying the actual weapons themselves, we also provide a degree of coaching in how to hold and use weapons safety, and how people like when people are actually holding them, how to hold them and the application of those weapons, so they look a little bit more realistic.
And that's everything from guns to baseball bats to whatever. It's not just guns, is it?
Primarily my focus is firearms, yep, but along the way we've accumulated quite a few other weapons, including baseball bats, yep. We do have a few swords, we have knives, both rubber and plastic, grenades. I've also picked up radios, what we call CES, so everything from webbing, fake body armor, uniforms, including some pretty good police uniforms, police badges, all that sort of stuff as well.
Okay, so basically if people wanted to make like a full cop film or something, they can, yeah?
Yep. What we did was create some uniforms. Actually, it was a project I worked on with yourself. I saw some of the uniforms that had been initially supplied, and thought I could do a little bit better than that. Kudos to your costume designer at the time, who actually puts together some very good ones at the last minute. But we've developed some very good ones that resemble an old West Australian police uniform. So light blue shirt, dark blue trousers, caps, badges. We've had custom-made patches made up. So we are close enough to look like a police officer, but not enough to actually be impersonating a police officer.
Okay. Ziggy said hi. How are you, Ziggy? So obviously we'll get onto the topic of rust a little bit later on. So when people want to use firearms on your set, what's one of the main things that you advise them on or let them know before you even consider it?
First up is what firearms and what type of firearms they need, and if they actually do need firearms at all. And by that, I specialize in what we call imitation firearms. So they are not real firearms under the law. They're controlled weapons under the Weapons Act of WA and regulations, as opposed to firearms, which are controlled under the Firearms Act and regulations. We've got multiple levels from some very simple rubber. This is going to work, so I'm doing it on my phone now. One-piece castings, which look like a gun, and that's all they are. They're lightweight. This one doesn't have a trigger. They've got no moving parts, and we can actually go up all the way to weapons that will simulate everything a real firearm will do, except go bang, obviously. We do have some blank firing ones as well that will make a bang and a flash. So one of the first questions we ask is, what are you using them for? If they're simply sitting in a holster, then we go for as simple as we possibly can. There's no sense in going too complex. And then the next question, of course, is how many they need and where they're using them. So before we even get into handling the firearms, we need to know what the environment they're going to be used in, because we need to make sure that we actually advise the appropriate people, including the police, and things like that. And then we'll actually move into the safety side of it and how to actually handle the firearm.
Okay, so the one you just showed us, so you've got what they call drop guns, yeah?
That was a drop gun I showed you, yeah.
And do they get commonly used for rehearsals and things like that, or are they just?
Yes. I actively encourage people, if they're doing blocking. We've got them in black at the moment in a couple of different types. I've also got some of the original ones which are in blue. And blue is a internationally recognized safety color for training. So if you're doing block throughs or rehearsals, things like that, these guns are a far better option, simply because you're very difficult to hurt yourself with them, particularly with the blue ones. They are far less likely to be mistaken for a real firearm by anyone else who may be observing what's going on.
Okay. And so have you used a lot of blank, like actual firing guns on set?
Not in local films here. I've used blanks privately. but not on sets here. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, primarily safety. Yes, we'll talk about what happened on Rust, but people also fail to take into account issues like sight and hearing damage. These things are extremely loud. If you're going to have a shootout inside a room somewhere, you need to be wearing hearing protection. Your crew need to be wearing hearing protection. It's often easier. If you don't need to use them, don't use them. The other reason is that currently in WA, we're not allowed to use what they call a forward venting blank fire imitation firearm. We can use a functional licensed firearm that has been modified for blank fire. What we can use as imitation firearms is something like, give me a second. For example, get it out of the box. Got one here. It was all working really well when I had this on the stand, but unfortunately, no.
That's all right.
Something like this one.
Okay.
And that's actually a what we call a top venting or side venting blank firer. And what you can't see me doing right now before I pick it up again is just reconfirming that it's actually empty.
Okay.
So with these ones, again, you're probably not going to be able to see this too well. There's actually the barrel is blocked, and any of the blast actually vents out through through the side of the cylinder here. So nothing actually goes forward. On the semi-autos, the actual vent, you can't see it too well in this lighting, unfortunately, and where I'm holding it is actually there's a small hole in the top of the chamber there. So again, the barrel's blocked. So the flash will actually come up. There's no way anything can go forward out of the barrel. Problem with that, now that we're using far better definition on our cameras, higher resolution, higher frame rates, is it's very obvious that the flame's not coming out the barrel. So you can remove it post-production, but it's actually quite difficult. Putting a dummy flash at the front is fairly easy, I've been told, but removing the other flash can be a little bit difficult. Third reason for not using a lot of blanks is cost. You are looking anywhere up to $2 per round. If you have a gunfight where someone's just fired 30 rounds, that's $60 before you even start. And then if you get it wrong and have to redo it, it just becomes a very, very expensive exercise.
So the way that they like it comes out the side and the back, is that you modified it, or did you have them modified before you bought them?
No, these specific ones are built as imitation firearms, so they're not firearms at all. They're called an imitation. And these ones are built, they come from the manufacturer to either side vent, top vent, or in the case of the forward vent ones, to forward vent.
Okay. And obviously, so there'd be a lot of, with them being imitation, is it hard to get them here?
Right now, yes, extremely hard. In theory, they don't require a license in WA, but you do require a permit to import, which is issued by WA police. It was fairly free reign. We did have some big issues with someone bringing a lot in. And they turned up being used for nefarious purposes. So the police aren't just handing out import permits. You need to have a valid reason for doing it, or they just won't issue the permit, in which case you won't be able to bring it in.
Okay. Now, if somebody was to obviously come up to you and say, look, Brendan, we want to use blanks on set, would you do it?
Not, it's a bit of a complex answer. Short answer is, or the long answer would be yes, but, and then it's where we go into discussion about, do we really need to be using blanks? Is there another option that we can use? And why do you want to use blanks? What effect are you looking for? Because what they may be looking for, you may not be able to achieve with blank ammunition at all.
Well, yeah, and I think part of the reason for that might also be budget, really, because maybe they might not have the budget to CGI the effects in, and they want that effect of a blank fire. So in that circumstance, it's still probably not ideal, but in that circumstance, because a lot of people don't have money to finish stuff in post, or like the pet haters do it in post. Yeah, so I suppose in that situation, that might be one where you may do it. I don't know. Yep,
and it would also be subject to a lot of controls. It wouldn't just be a free for all. Let's all go out and start having a yippee shoot. We'd actually sit down. We'd establish the protocols we're going to use, what procedure we're going to use, and we'd stick rigidly to that. And there's always that clause: if you're not following what we request you to do, or I request you to do as an armourer, I will pack up my toys and go home. If I don't think that it's safe, I will stop doing it straight away. And repeated, or even in some case a first breach, if it's bad enough, would be enough for me just to say no. I'm not doing this. Okay. It's we're putting too many people at risk.
So this is a comment from Ziggy. Obviously, he was on Black Ghost. It says, "Glad we didn't use ammo in our shoot. I'm sure Anthony would have accidentally shot me." But yeah, so just go. Yeah, so just on Black Ghost, it was really, everyone felt extremely safe, except for the one incident that obviously happened later on. But that was
outside. Yep.
Yeah. You know, you made it perfectly clear when you got to set that, and I tried to make it as clear as I can, that only the people involved in using the guns were to handle them, and they weren't to handle them unless you gave them to them, and you showed everybody how to use them and said, don't put your finger on the trigger until you're ready. And I think that made everybody feel more, and even them, they didn't have bullets in them, but we were able to, in a way, add the sound in as best we could. But even with the sniper rifle or the rifle I was using, which I was a bit of a retard because I was closing the wrong eye because I've never used one before. But even those kind of guns, just giving a rundown on them, on how to use them, and also even the right up to the part where you said if the police turn up, just everybody put them down and just let you deal with them. I think there needs to be that, to know that happens, I think made everyone feel a lot safer as well.
Yeah, and that's part of the, well, for want of a better word, professionalism that's involved in it, is that we have a procedure, we stick to it. If we have a set of rules that everyone follows, everyone knows where they go with it. One of the reasons we went that path, and we still go down that way, even though we're using imitation firearms, is at some point in your career as an actor, as a producer, as a director, you are going to be dealing with either with a live firearm modified to fire blanks. Yeah. If you develop a bad habit now, literally playing with a toy gun, that's a habit you'll carry forward. If you become used to not watching or not having muzzle discipline, not knowing where your gun's pointing, resting your fingers on the trigger, those sort of things, those habits are very easy to learn and very hard to unlearn. I've got to the point now where I pick up a power drill, I actually practice trigger discipline on that. I don't put my finger on the trigger. And that's one of the reasons we go that there is, we impress on people that these aren't toys, they're a controlled weapon. And that helps build that degree of trust with people as well.
Yeah. So Ziggy's also commented saying, love firearms, love spending time at the range.
He does, or?
Yeah. For you, is that the only time you would use live firearms?
Yep. Yeah, in a range. At this point, I'm not bringing live firearms on the sets, excuse me. There's a lot of other issues involved with that. What people make the mistake with, it's actually an offence to point a... Hello, can you hear us?
Oh, sorry, yeah, it just sounded like I was a bit muffled.
Okay. It's actually an offence under the regulations in WA to point a firearm at another person. So... even though they're modified, even though a firearm might be modified for blank firing, it's still a licensed firearm, and we're subject to all those rules and regulations. It is just far safer and easier to be using imitation firearms. I do have an extensive collection of personal firearms, both on my collector's license and on my shooting license, but yeah, they're not coming anywhere near a movie set.
Okay. I think there's something wrong with my mic. Just give me 1 sec.
I'm hearing you fine.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I could hear you before as well.
Okay.
It's a bit clearer.
Just Ziggy said, what's with the sound? I don't know what's going on.
Is it me or you?
Oh, yeah, sounds fine. Just through my headphones. So, what else? All right, so I've got a comment here from somebody today. They've asked me to ask a question.
Is that the one from Bob Hart?
Yeah. it's quite a long one. It says, asking about armourers and gunsmiths, whether an armourer should have the developed skills of a gunsmith and not just a hobby-level understanding of the inner workings of firearms. If a weapon is misfiring or spontaneously discharging, as commentary on Rust tragically suggests, then it requires skilled maintenance or destruction to avoid the gun going into the wrong hands.
Yep. In answer to that, whether an armourer needs to be a gunsmith, my first answer would be no. If the gun's not working and it's something that would require a gunsmith level attention, take it off set, get rid of it, swap it out for another one. Do not continue to use it. It's like if your car's brakes aren't working, you don't continue to use it in the hope that it's going to get better. So at that point, yeah, you don't necessarily need to be, or wouldn't necessarily need to be a gunsmith. You certainly do need to have an understanding of firearms, probably a little bit beyond the went down to Lone Rangers twice and got to fire a shotgun sort of thing. So you need to know firearms, to have a fair degree of skill, and to be competent in actually one, handling a firearm, and two, in safe handling of a firearm.
Yeah, okay.
Probably a lot of people who shoot casually may not necessarily have the degree of they're competent to use a firearm, but they might not have the same level that you find in someone who, for example, was a range officer shooting on a firing range or something of that nature. Using a gun on a set is probably more akin to in the military than going out the back and target shooting, because a lot of people have firearms and you're being handed a deadly weapon.
Okay. So I just got a comment here from Svetlana. She was on Black Ghost.
Yep.
It says the brief you both have to the crew before the actual filming of BG was very helpful and professional. Which every film set was so well organised.
It's a matter in response to that is everyone needs to feel comfortable. So it's all very good to say, oh, the armourer's here, don't worry about it. I don't need to know anything. Is you and I need the person who is either handling the firearm or got to point it at them to feel comfortable with what's happening and understand, so that, for example, if I demonstrate that the weapon is unloaded, and if I'm not demonstrating it right, then you can pick that up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I quite regularly, and I've been laughed at before by asking, has anyone here actually brought a firearm or live ammunition on set? Because that's not unknown to happen. And we don't want something like that happening where there's a weapon that we don't actually have control or eyes on to actually turn up somewhere, because we've got no idea what state it's actually in.
Okay, does my mic sound like it's echoing?
Just a little bit of echo. That might be me though, because I'm not using earphones here.
Oh, let me try something here. Is that better?
Yep, that's good.
Okay. Yeah. What's the difference between armourer and a prop master?
You broke up. You say, what's the difference between an armourer and a prop master?
Yeah.
Don't know the technical differences. The armourer has weapons expertise and is responsible for the weapons. Prop master would be overseeing all the props